They said I quit. Said I wasn't strong enough. So my name disappeared from family photos, and invitations. But I never gave up. I was chosen for something bigger, something I couldn't talk about. And when I showed up again, they weren't laughing. They were saluting. As the Pentagon called me commander. They didn't say I failed, but they made sure everyone else believed it. When I left the Air Force Academy at 19, they didn't ask why. They didn't ask anything. At all. No calls, no questions, just silence. The kind that fills a room and stays there for years. In my family, that was worse than shouting, worse than disappointment. It was exile. I'm Nina Carter. 41 years old. The forgotten daughter of a military dynasty in Colorado Springs. My dad, Lieutenant Colonel Benjamin Carter, retired with honors. Mom, Evelyn Carter, was a combat nurse who still wears her medals like their skin. And Sophie, my younger sister, she's the one they talk about. The rising star. She's 33 now and about to be pinned as a lieutenant. Colonel in the Air Force. Her face is on the family Christmas cards. Mine hasn't been there since 2002. When I left the academy in my first year. The story they told was simple. Nina didn't have what it takes. She couldn't handle the pressure. She walked away. They never knew the truth. They never asked. I didn't walk away. I was recruited into a program they'll never read about. A Black Ops unit buried so deep, most of it doesn't officially exist. No photos, no medals, no ceremonies, just scars. For the past 2 decades, I've served my country in ways they'll never understand. I've returned from missions that don't show up on a map. I've made decisions that still wake me up at night. And not once never did I get a thank you. Or even a welcome back. When Sophie graduated from OTS, they flew banners. When I returned from a 9-month deployment, they forgot to pick me up from the airport. Said they lost track of time. Said I should have sent a reminder. And I stayed quiet. For years, until last week, it was a Sunday morning. Chilly, clear skies. I was pouring coffee in my tiny DC apartment when my phone rang. It was Mom. Her voice was as warm as a hospital chart. Your sister's getting promoted next weekend, she said. You should come, but don't wear anything strange. We don't want you drawing attention. Just support her, okay? Support her, as if that's all I've ever done. She didn't ask if I was doing well. Didn't ask where I lived now. Didn't say she missed me, she just didn't want me to embarrass. I paused. Felt the anger rise in my chest, then cool into something sharper. I said, sure, I'll be there. But I wasn't coming for a reunion. I was coming to remind them I exist. To show them what they chose to erase. They thought I disappeared. That I was too ashamed to face them again. They have no idea what I've become. What I carry, but they will. They thought I dropped out, but I was chosen for something secret to celebrate. After my first year at the Air Force Academy, something changed. Not in me, well, not yet, but around me. One day, I was pulled aside during physical training. A man in a charcoal gray suit, not uniformed, asked me to step into an unmarked SUV. No explanation. No goodbye. Just orders. My parents thought I had flunked out. Said I lacked the discipline. Said I wasn't cut out for service. But the truth. I was selected. Quietly and off the books. For a deep shadow NSA program that doesn't appear on any website or Pentagon list. They called it the Strategic Intelligence Field Integration Initiative. Half analysts, half ghosts. All invisible. Instead of parades and brass bands, I got an alias, a new handler, and a suitcase full of redacted files. I trained for 18 months in cryptography, psychological operations, surveillance protocols, and cultural deep dive insertion. Then I vanished. For years, I lived like smoke. Assignment after assignment, Assyria, northern Pakistan. No uniform, no trace. I slipped into cities under false names and out of them with flash drives containing enough intel to stop wars before they started. But every time I came home, well, tried to, it felt like walking into someone else's life. I'd send my mom birthday flowers from a fake return address. I'd drop postcards in the mail to my sister when she got promoted. No one ever wrote back. When I finally made it home for a Christmas dinner discreet, unannounced, I found a family photo on the living room wall. Everyone smiling. Matching sweaters. No space for me. I asked, gently, did I miss the group shot? Mom didn't even blink. That one didn't fit the frame. She didn't mean the picture. I was edited out like I'd never existed. My seat. At the table was filled by a neighbor's son studying criminal law. Someone joked, "At least he didn't drop out." I smiled. I didn't argue. The truth I carried was too heavy to defend in words. They thought I'd quit, but I had never stopped serving. Not for a day. I'd held the hands of operatives bleeding out in sandblasted ruins. I'd stayed awake for 72 hours coordinating a civilian extraction in Moldova. I'd once crawled through a drainage tunnel to plant a listening device beneath a rebel command center. Heart pounding so loud I thought it would give me away. And while they toasted Sophie's new commission with champagne, I was eating cold rations under foreign stars, praying for silence on the radio. But they wouldn't. No, they didn't want to. Because my service didn't come with headlines. Because my medals were never pinned in public. Because I wasn't the version of a daughter they could boast about at church or print on the Christmas letter. I was the version they had to explain, so they didn't. They just quietly erased me. They invited me out of duty, not love. The flight to Colorado Springs was quiet, too quiet for someone returning home. But then again, was I even going home? No one met me at the airport. No sign, no hug, no welcome, just me, my bag, and the cold hum of a place that never really missed me. I rented a car and drove myself to the family house, the one with the same white fence, the same flag in the yard. Everything looked the same, and somehow, it felt even smaller. I walked up the steps slowly, suitcase in hand. The door creaked open before I could knock. It was Mom. She didn't smile, didn't even step aside. Instead, she said, "Dinner's in an hour. Please don't wear anything that'll embarrass Sophie." No hello, no glad you made it. Just an instruction. Like I was staff. Like I was the problem she hoped wouldn't show up. I nodded quietly and stepped inside. The house smelled like lemon cleaner and old wood. Memories pressed in from every corner. Family pictures on the wall, photos of Sophie in uniform, Jason in his promotion ceremony. No trace of me. Not even from before I left West Point. The dining room was already half full. A few officers from Sophie's unit. Some extended family I hadn't seen in over a decade. I took the seat at the far end, away from the spotlight, away from the expectations. Sophie made her grand entrance 20 minutes late. All polished and perfect. Her uniform crisp, ribbons gleaming, hair pulled into a regulation bun. Everyone stood to greet her. Kisses on cheeks, handshakes, laughter. Then she saw me. For a second, her smile faltered. "This is my sister," she said, gesturing toward me like I was part of the furniture. She used to be in the Air Force Academy. For a little while, the words stung, more than they should have. Used to be, for a little while, a careful rewrite of my life, packaged to protect her image. One of the officers, young, probably a second lieutenant, turned to me and smiled. "So, what do you do now, DMV, or admin work?" His tone wasn't cruel. Just casually dismissive, the way people talk to women they've already decided aren't important. I gave him a small smile. Didn't show teeth, didn't answer. Silence is powerful when your truth is something they can't imagine. Dinner passed in slow motion. Polite chatter, laughter, toasts. No one asked me a single question. No one made room for me in the conversation. I ate quietly, hands in my lap, eyes down. Not because I was ashamed, but because I knew the game. Here, I wasn't the eldest daughter. I wasn't the veteran. I wasn't even family. Really, I was a ghost. Allowed to sit at the table, but never asked to speak. The air inside the main auditorium of Peterson Air Force Base buzzed with stiff pride and quiet protocol. Rows of medals gleamed under brass chandeliers, and polished boots clicked across the marble floor like punctuation marks in a ceremony meant to impress. I sat near the back. Labeled on the seating chart as family unranked. The phrasing stung more than I expected. In front of me, officers adjusted their ties, family members whispered to each other, and Sophie stood on stage. Poised like the future of the Air Force itself, she looked sharp in her uniform, ribbons aligned perfectly, rank bars shining under the lights. She opened with a few lines about commitment, sacrifice, and the honor of service. Then her tone shifted. "In every journey, there are those who stay the course. And those who abandon the mission," she said, scanning the crowd. "It's those who endure who truly deserve recognition." I didn't flinch. I'd been shot at in the desert. Words couldn't pierce me the same way. But just as Sophie paused for applause, a sound cut through the room. Bootsteps, sharp, authoritative. The back doors opened. A hush fell over the crowd as General Marcus Scott entered, commander of Joint Special Operations, a legend. Every officer in the room straightened. He didn't walk toward the front. He scanned the rows. His eyes landed on me. And he stopped. Asterisk. Without hesitation, he brought his hand up in a crisp, textbook salute. General Carter, he said clearly. An honor to see you again, ma'am. The room froze. Sophie's mouth parted slightly. Her next line vanished from her cue cards. My mother dropped her water glass. It shattered on the tile like a punctuation mark to years of silence. My father stood halfway up in reflex, then slowly sat back down, face pale. I stood slowly, not out of pride, but out of respect. I returned the salute, clean, steady. The officers, in the front row, turned their heads toward me. I caught one whispering, "Is that her?" From Operation Halberd, the same ones who'd ignored me 10 minutes ago now. Watched like they were seeing a ghost materialize. Sophie's voice cracked as she tried to continue. Her hand trembled around the note card, but the weight in the room had shifted. The gravity had changed. And for the first time in years, I wasn't invisible. I wasn't the sister who couldn't hack it. I was someone who commanded silence, not with noise, but with presence. Someone they had buried under assumptions. And now I was standing in full view, without apology. I thought the night was over. The ceremony had ended. The base was quiet again. I returned to the guest quarters they'd assigned me, just a temporary room on the edge of the officers' complex. Cold sheets, no photos, plain furniture. The kind of room you only sleep in when you're not meant to stay. But there it was, a plain manila envelope on the coffee table. No name, no address. Just sitting there like it belonged. I looked around. The windows were shut. Door locked. I hadn't heard anyone come in, but whoever left it wanted me to find it. Inside, folded in thirds, was a printed email. Black and white. No subject line. Just a timestamp from 3 days ago, and a message. The words hit me like a cold slap. Silver Echo. Whistleblower. Tip. Jordan Blake accessed classified files during the operation. Attached, her field report and timestamped login. Silver Echo. I hadn't heard those words in over 6 years. It was the op that nearly ended my career before it ever started. A failed drone intercept. Misinformation. 12 civilians dead. I had been part of the intelligence team, feeding real-time data, and when it all went wrong, they pointed fingers at me. I was investigated, stripped of clearance, dragged through months of internal review. But in the end, I was cleared. It wasn't my call. Wasn't my error. They apologized, quietly, and just like that, the file was sealed, buried, never to be spoken of again, until now. I flipped the printout, scanned the metadata header. It had been sent from inside the Peterson network, from a secured workstation. One still active, and not just any terminal. A temporary officer loginer signed last week to Sophie Blake. I sat down hard. My stomach dropped. Why would Sophie access that file? Why now? Was this part of her rising career? Digging through my past to make sure no shadows followed her own? Or worse, was she trying to discredit me again? Reignite something that had nearly destroyed me the first time. It didn't make sense. We were family. But then again, what did that word even mean anymore? I opened my laptop, pulled up every access record I could reach through my DoD credentials. Who touched the file? When, what they opened? Where it was sent? The logs were there. Someone had pulled my Silver Echo briefing, downloaded it, printed it, but they didn't send it to command. They sent it to me. A warning, a threat, or a test. The message was clear, though unspoken. You're not safe. Your past isn't gone. And someone still wants you out. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. I had been silent once. Swallowed the shame they handed me. Let them define me by rumors and clipped headlines. But not this time. Whoever was playing games with my past, they forgot something. I didn't come back as the scared 19-year-old. They pushed aside. I came back trained, hardened, ready. And if they wanted a war, they just picked the wrong soldier. I didn't want to keep digging. But the silence from Sophie after the ceremony, no text, no call, not even a look, told me everything I needed to know. She wasn't relieved I was innocent. She was upset that I was still standing, so I started connecting dots. I used a backdoor channel to access archived base activity logs, something I hadn't done in years. But muscle memory returned fast. Everything leaves a trail, even digital, ghosts. Buried beneath months of standard access records was a string of unusual activity from a single device in the comms division. The machine had recently been reassigned, 3 months ago, to be exact. The new user ID attached. Sophie Carter. My sister. At first, I thought maybe she had unknowingly clicked on something, like people do with phishing scams. Maybe it was innocent, maybe she had no idea. But the metadata said otherwise. There were multiple failed password attempts into a restricted folder titled Legacy Tech Protocol. That folder hadn't been touched in years. Until Sophie poked around inside it during her research for a special presentation on data security. One file in that folder had a dormant line of code. Malware. Not the amateur kind either. This was buried deep, masked to look like legacy encryption. It activated on access and triggered a cascade of server requests that made it appear someone had funneled intel through civilian channels. The kind of digital breadcrumb that ends careers. The same malware I encountered once before back in 2016. I knew exactly who had written it. Derek Miles. Derek had been a logistics officer with more ambition than integrity. He pitched a higher-risk data compression strategy. I shut it down in front of senior brass. He lost face, and I gained a silent enemy. Apparently, he'd planted a time bomb and waited. But Sophie, she had no clue. She'd opened that file out of ego. Out of some desperate need to prove she belonged in a room she already had access to. And her mistake became my disgrace. I sat at my desk, jaw locked, heart pacing slower than my thoughts. What stung most wasn't that Derek had set the trap. It was that Sophie had stepped into it, then stepped on me to climb out. Now the choice was mine. Expose her. Burn the whole thing down with truth and walk away clean. Or use this breadcrumb to trace Derek, finish what I started back in 2016, and show them all what justice really looked like. I picked up my phone. For the first time in years, I called Sophie. When she answered, I didn't yell, I didn't accuse. I said, "You triggered it. I can prove it. But I need your help now." She was quiet for a long moment. Then, "What do you want me to do?" I never thought I'd be sitting in a secure operations trailer with my parents, but there we were. Dad, in his old army-issued jacket, pacing the floor like it was a battlefield. Mom, calm but focused, combing through metadata like she was back in triage, and Sophie, silent. She hadn't spoken to me since the phone call. Now, she sat across from me, eyes glued to the screen, typing faster than her shame could catch her. We weren't a family anymore. We were a task force. It was surreal, but it worked. We'd triangulated the source of Derek Miles' last digital footprint to a decommissioned satellite uplink facility near Moab, Utah, desert country, quiet off-grid, just like Derek. We ran a tight op. Sophie rerouted surveillance feeds. Mom monitored data traffic and prepared med support. Dad coordinated local support from old friends, still active in tactical response. Me. I was command. No badge, no uniform. But every eye turned to me for decisions. And I made them. We moved in before dawn. Derek didn't run. He knew it was over. When we breached the comms room, he didn't reach for a weapon. He smiled. "Didn't think it'd be you," he said to me. Then turned to Sophie. "But I should have known you'd screw it up." We took him in without incident. During debrief, Derek sang like a bird. Said he'd embedded that malware not just to sabotage me but to expose the military's over-reliance on unverified contractors. Claimed he was a whistleblower with teeth. But the twist. He said my family made it easy. Left access points open. Used unsecured comms. Treated me like an outcast, which gave him all the cover he needed. No one disputed it. In the official report, Sophie was cited for improper protocol. She wasn't criminally charged, but she lost her pending promotion. 5-year probation. Command roles. When the review board closed its findings, we were called in for a final meeting. The room was stiff, brass everywhere. Cold air, hot tension. Then my father stood up. He didn't look at them, he looked at me. "I failed," he said. "I failed my daughter. Not as a soldier, but as a father." I believed headlines, not her. Nobody breathed. Mom nodded slightly, tears in her eyes. Sophie stared at the table. For a second, I felt something tighten in my chest. Maybe regret, maybe release. But I didn't say anything. Because something had shifted. They weren't denying me anymore. They weren't erasing me. But that didn't mean I had to forgive them. Sometimes, the truth doesn't set you free. It just makes you seen. The ballroom was quiet, not out of boredom, but reverence. I stood at the podium, not in uniform, not under rank, just as myself. No title, no stars, no apologies. This time, they invited me to speak. And they meant it. The Federal Strategic Defense Conference brought together generals, analysts, policymakers, and cadets. Rows and rows of crisp uniforms and sharp eyes. But the one face I kept locking onto was Sophie, front row, pen in hand. No smirk, no pretense, and just listening. I cleared my throat and began. I'm not here to tell you how to win a war, I said. I'm here to tell you what happens when you forget who's in it. Then I told them a story I'd never shared before. Not with anyone. 7 years ago, during a mission in northern Syria, we had confirmation of an enemy cell. A strike was ordered, fast, clean, but when I surveyed the ground, I saw 12 civilians being used as human shields, mostly women and children. Protocol said, act. My gut said wait. I delayed the strike by 4 minutes. We lost the target, but we saved 12 lives, and for that, I was almost dishonorably discharged. Almost no medal. No commendation. Just silence and reassignment. I made the call. I continued, my voice steady. Leadership isn't barking orders. It's carrying weight that others pretend doesn't exist. A murmur swept through the room. Not disagreement, recognition. I didn't wait for applause. I stepped away from the podium as quietly as I had arrived. No handshakes. No spotlight. Just the sound of my boots echoing down the marble hall. Back home, the mailbox held one envelope. No return address. Inside, a single sheet of paper. I'm sorry, truly S. No long explanations. No expectations. Just a sentence I'd waited decades to hear. I didn't cry. I didn't frame it, I just tucked it into the back of my journal. And moved forward. When I opened my laptop that night, an encrypted notification blinked at me. It read, Operation Valkyrie approved. Mission class. Tier 1 Black. Command Officer, General Nina Carter. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I closed the lid. Not because I was overwhelmed, but because I was ready. People think justice is a moment, a courtroom, a takedown, a public apology. But real justice? It's living through the worst. And still choosing to rise.